So this week saw the release of Deep Blue Sea 3. When I found this out, I said, whoa, 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 whoa. There was a Deep Blue Sea 2? Welcome back to ML Miller Frights, part of the Kings of Horror Network. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, remember to give this video a like, share with your buddies across the electronic superhighway, click subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. Please get the word out about the channel to new folks so that I can tame and tempt that all-important YouTube algorithm. Anyone who has followed my reviews through the years will know that there's one thing that scares me more than anything else, and that's sharks. Maybe it's the reckless days of my youth when I used to swim in the ocean on vacation, way past the point of where I could touch bottom. For some reason, I had no fear that somewhere below me might be a toothy monster ready to chomp down and pull me under. Like every other kid in the 80s, I'd seen Jaws, but my irrational fear of sharks really began in my teens. I guess it happened when I started watching horror films more addictively. Jaws still works for me every time I see it, and while there have been a few good shark films through the years, like The Reef, The Shallows, and 47 Meters Down, I even like the sequel. There are more bad shark movies than there are good, and no one argues that Jaws is the end-all, be-all, best shark movie ever made. It probably will always reign that way. In 1999, though, I got to see Deep Blue Sea, and I have to say I loved every second of it. This film is ridiculous in a good way. It had a cast of notables: Thomas Jane, Saffron Burrows, Stellan Skarsgård, Michael Rappaport, Ada Turturro, Samuel L. Jackson, and who can forget LL Cool J and that freaking talking parrot of his. Directed by Renny Harlin, Deep Blue Sea was popcorny and fun. But it still managed to have quite a few scenes where the threat was real, the stakes were high, and the scares actually made me jump and pull my knees to my chin a few times. Plus, it has one of the best monologues in action movie history by Samuel L. Jackson, punctuated by one of the best shark attack shocks I've ever seen. The idea of heightening the intelligence of the sharks gave us the smart shark, and it made the whole film wonky, sci-fi, and watchable. I know that whenever the film is on TV, when I'm flipping through the channels, I'm watching it. Almost 20 years later, in the year 2018, remember how young we all were then? Those who hold the rights to Deep Blue Sea have decided to make a sequel. Who knows why? Maybe they wanted to cash in on the Shark Week phenomenon. Maybe they saw a hole that needed to be filled since the Sharknado movies had fizzled out. Maybe films like The Shallows and 47 Meters Down got some exec thinking that dusting off this old chestnut was a good idea. If you remember the plot of Deep Blue Sea, then you probably aren't the target audience the makers of Deep Blue Sea 2 are shooting for, as it basically is the same, from beginning to end, told in a cheaper, dumbed-down, and less capable way. The locale is moved to South Africa, and instead of fighting Alzheimer's, the drug makes humans access our full brain potential. The benefactor of an undersea research station has a paranoid notion that machines are going to take over, and human brains have to be expanded and improved upon in order to avoid the machine apocalypse. So I guess Deep Blue Sea 2 somehow ties into the Terminator franchise. Deep Blue Sea 2 swims right past a lot of the crucial details simply because it wants to get to the shark action. But in the original, there was a point to let the audience know that the facility is deep, deep underwater. That's what added the suspense when the shit goes sideways with the sharks. I'm sure it wasn't in the budget to communicate this visually, but I think a few lines made in a long elevator trip would have sufficed. Because Part 2 was filmed at a fraction of the budget of Deep Blue Sea, the bulk of it is in endless corridors lit with different colors to make the viewers feel they aren't seeing the same corridor over and over. What's really nuts is that the main challenge is a swarm of CG mini sharks that make it more of a piranha movie than a Deep Blue Sea film. The bigger bull sharks, described as deadlier than the great white earlier in the film, appear more as an afterthought in the last 10 minutes of the movie. Deep Blue Sea 2's most memorable moment is a fantastically bad scene where one guy is taking the miracle drug synthesized from the sharks in his private office, and one of the sharks is watching him do this through a porthole window. Later, the same dude describes how he has a plan to destroy the sharks after he gets the data he needs. And again, we're right back cutting to that porthole of the shark listening closely, and you see his eye getting all pissed. It's the funniest moment of this film, and it definitely isn't supposed to be taken that way. But this is the most enjoyment I got out of the film. I'd describe Deep Blue Sea 2 as bearable. It's the Jaws 3 of the series if you compare both franchises to the original of their respective series. It's not as clever, scary, shocking, or funny as the original by a long shot. This leads to the second sequel, and the main reason I'm doing this video, as Deep Blue Sea 3 dropped on digital download and on demand this week. This also has a planned Blu-ray DVD release of August 23rd. Deep Blue Sea 3 seems to not only clean up the plot mess of Deep Blue Sea 2, but also tries to salvage the reputation of the entire series. The story is tied heavily to Deep Blue Sea 2, though. It shifts to a fishing community off the coast of Africa, which used to be a flourishing city, but now it's the home of only a handful of locals and a pair of underwater conservationists. One of them, Dr. Emma Collins, played by Texas Chainsaw and Lost actress Tanya Raymond, who, like her counterparts Saffron Burrows in Deep Blue Sea and Danielle Savre from Deep Blue Sea 2, also looks pretty sweet in a wetsuit, which I guess must be a requirement to get those doctorate distinctions. All three films managed to put their leading ladies in swimsuits and various forms of undress. And if I'm ranking, while Saffron Burrows is gorgeous and Tanya Raymond is pretty sweltering in Deep Blue Sea 3, I'm going to have to give the prize to Deep Blue Sea 2's spunky Danielle Savre for reasons. Dr. Collins is passionate about preserving the coral reef and all the ocean life in it, which is a recurring theme in Deep Blue Sea 3. Since Deep Blue Sea 2 was pretty much themeless, this automatically makes Deep Blue Sea 3 superior. When the surviving 3 sharks from Deep Blue Sea 2 show up at the community, a tugboat with a corporate cleanup crew follows. Now fully grown, the 3 smart sharks begin to terrorize the few remaining inhabitants of the man-made island. Wouldn't you know it, the corporate cleanup crew are swarthy bastards, and Collins and her bodyguard and former Marine, Eugene, played by Emerson Brooks, and the rest of the small community must band together to take on both them and the smart sharks. Almost immediately you notice the difference in quality of Deep Blue Sea 3. While still not the greatest of budgets, at least it tries to tell a different story. The floating community, like the underwater base, begins to take on water and sink, just as the original did and the lame sequel. But the shift in setting is different enough to cause some interesting and new challenges. The direction is much more proficient in Deep Blue Sea 3. Renny Harlin was able to time some great and inventive jump scares, including the famous Samuel L. Jackson speech. Director John Pogue is not in the same league as Harlin, but he's able to set up 1 or 2 very shocking and knee-slapping scares that are comparable, but again, different than the original. One scene in particular is extremely well done, and I guarantee it's going to be a crowd pleaser, and the one you're going to be talking about when this film is finished. The lead, Tiana Raymond, is solid and better than the entire cast of the previous film. But overall, everyone else does a decent job, and there really isn't an unlikable cast member of the bunch. There's an especially fun face-off between Eugene and one of the pirates as they drop their weapons and go hand-to-hand while the sharks are swimming around and above them. It's dumb fun, but it's fun nevertheless. The sharks look pretty good. I still think it was a mistake to go with bull sharks instead of great whites. The great whites in the original stood out because their teeth were all gnarly and jagged. This made them look like floating missiles with snaggle teeth compared to the well-spaced jawline that we usually see in the Jaws films. The bull sharks headbutt their prey first before digging into them, a formidable method of killing, but I'll take the toothy monsters of the original any old day. Still, there are some tense scenes as well as a sizable amount of gore. as the sharks tend to not share their food very well and really like to rip these humans to shreds. At least this one doesn't have tiny sharks eating folks for the bulk of the film, as what happened in Deep Blue Sea 2. Since I said Deep Blue Sea 2 was the Jaws 3 of the Deep Blue Sea trilogy, I'll say Deep Blue Sea 3 is the Jaws 2. It's familiar, but still rather fun, and bordering on the wild and watchable side of goofy. While you can't beat the original, Deep Blue Sea 3 is a worthy follow-up and acts as a fun shark attack time waster. Self-promo time. I think followers of this channel might be interested in a comic book that I wrote coming out on September 5th called GRAVETRANCERS. This is a trade paperback collecting the 4-issue series. The final order cutoff for GRAVETRANCERS is August 10th, so there's still time to get into your comic shops and tell that comic guy that you need a copy for yourself and maybe one for your friends. That'll do it for today. If you like this video, pound that thumbs up button. Share the video with your social media addicted pals. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on mlmillerwrites.com. And be sure to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell for alerts to be the first to see my future videos. Thanks so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're